Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough and review of Syngular, the new instrument that's available in Pianoteq. And this is not a real instrument, so it's very different in that sense from existing Pianoteq instruments, right? Like the various pianos or harps and stuff like that. So this is an unreal instrument, but it's based on the same kind of physical modeling synthesis that is used for the other engines here. So the difference is, if we go into this panel here, we have different parameters that are exposed here. Now you need to have the Pianoteq standard or pro license if you want to go in and tweak these things. If you only have the stage license, the basic Pianoteq license, then you will not be able to access those parameters, but you will have access to the presets, right? Which there is a lot of them, and there's quite a lot of variety in the sounds of them, but I think that's something really important to bear in mind. So first we'll listen to a few demos of what this can sound like, and then I'll go through some of these parameters. And if you're buying any Pianoteq products and you're a fan of my channel, the affiliate link in the pinned comment of this video, if you use that when you're buying that stuff, it's a great way to support my work. Thanks, guys. So if you look at the name of a few of these presets, you'll see the name says something like saw or sine, right? So it sounds like a sine oscillator or a saw oscillator, but again, it's using this physical modeling synthesis. It's not typical subtractive synth oscillators. Got some nice bass lines. Note that a lot of these patches are set to respond to mod wheel. For example, here, mod wheel is triggering the LFO rate, vibrato, and tremolo. Some of those basses go pretty hard. There are some nice brass patches. Leads. There are some sequenced patches in here. I was a bit of a head scratcher at first when I was trying to figure out what the hell is sequencing these things. Well, it's actually the mallet bounce section. And what you need to pay attention to is a lot of these patches have more than one layer. So when I was trying to figure that out, I was turning off mallet bounce and I still had sequences, and I was like, what is causing these sequences? And it was because I hadn't paid attention to the fact that there were a bunch of different layers running. And there's also often going to be stuff going on down in the effects section, where you have a bunch of different options: tremolo, wah, chorus, flanger, phaser, fuzz, delay, amp, compression, and EQ. This is really good for pads, I think. There are even some kind of semi-choral pads. Some good keys. So let's go through a few of the controls here in this section. Again, you only have access to these if you have the standard license or the pro license. You don't have access to those if you have Stage, the cheapest license, but you can still use the presets. Another thing, if you have the standard or the pro license, is you've got this nice dice here, which will randomize everything and sometimes comes up with some very cool stuff, actually. Sometimes. Okay, so let's look at this. Start from this core sine. So I think we can start here looking at the voicing section, actually. So this controls the plucking brightness. So here we have something that sounds very sine-like. And then we pull the plucking brightness up, and it's more saw-like. Nice bright sound. So one important thing to know, this is very similar in a way to filter cutoff, right, on a subtractive synth, but this only affects the sound before you hit it. You can't use this as a filter after the fact. Let me show you what I mean. Like, let's say here I've got a bright sound, and I play that, and I pull this down, it won't make a bit of difference. So you can't modulate that like a filter on a subtractive synth. You'd have to use a filter app after that. That's a pity, I think, definitely. Another thing I'll look at here, you can change the profile. So basically changing the harmonics. Like, let me just take, for example, some of these up and some of them down. Let's just put this in the middle. Now let's change that. Different sound, right? No, resetting these is a little bit of a pain on the iPad. It's easier on desktop, you just double tap, but here I have to bring up this little box and then I've got to press reset. It's kind of annoying, to be honest. Okay, so then here you can also do LFO on the vibrato or on tremolo. That's related to some settings that we'll see later on further down in the app. Over here in tuning, change the tuning. You've got all sorts of stuff here. If you really want to go deep, you can get into all this micro tuning stuff. Or, you can just change it down to 432 or whatever frequency is the current flavor of the month. You have unison width here. So basically, every note uses 3 strings. So here we're just doing a detuning effect between those strings, basically. So they'll be very familiar to any synth heads. Now this direct sound, this is something to do with the decay of the initial sound. And you can see here, you've got a bit of a visualizer for things. And there's a thing here, smear. That'll basically muddy the transients, I think. You hear that's not as sharp compared to that. Also, you've got all these different temperaments and things for when you want to play as well. That's one of the strengths of Pianoteq, You want to play in well temperament or mean tone or whatever, you can do that. For here in the design section, so again, familiar to any synth heads, and you can see things changing over here as I tweak these. Attack. So nice fast attack there. Now we're getting more pad-like. decay and release. Now, this does not have a sustain control, right? So it's a bit different from a typical ADSR envelope. And that is because of the physical modeling in this. Different frequencies will decay at different rates. There is, though, the sustain pedal down here, which was on slightly actually. And then so release. It'll linger after I take my key, or after I take my finger off the key. And then here we have a bit more sophisticated controls for the delay. So here we're setting the cutoff. After that cutoff point, high frequencies will decay at a speed set by this slope. If we increase the value here, there's a higher slope, so that means they'll decay faster. So basically, if we have low cutoff here and a high slope, we'll have more decay. Compare those, right? That's just a quick press on the key. And that's what it's like with slope up. The same press, right? Strike point. Like where you hit a guitar with your pick, yeah, it's going to change the sound. Similar idea. That's definitely more noticeable with the high slope. Let's play with harmonicity here. So you see now this is more inharmonic, right? That is more harmonic, much more harmonic. Let me bring the plucking brightness down. That's actually more noticeable with the plucking brightness up. Okay. You can get some kind of like steel drum type effects with this bloom. So then down here in the action section, you can also play around with stuff here, like a damper position and things. Won't go into those mallet bounce. Let's just look quickly here. So you hear now, I'm just holding a note, but it's doing this bouncing effect. Let me put that up again. Maybe put it to half or something. And so we can change things like how that sound decays over time. So I mentioned there are some sequenced patches. Syngular, let's see, sequenced bass. Oops, too low, hang on. So yeah, so here, there are 3 layers set up. So if you look at mallet bounce here, for example, on this layer, it's a dotted half. And then, if I remember right, on different layers, that's got different values. Yeah, like here it's a quarter on that second layer. And on the third layer, it's 8 beats. So, I think you could do a lot with this layering. Again, layering and morphing only available on the standard and pro tiers. This is an example of a morph between Syngular and the tank drum in another one of the packs. I think the steel pans pack or something. Go back to the init patch. So you've got an EQ in here, and I won't go into that in any sort of detail, but you have, various presets, and it's pretty flexible EQ actually. You have note effects, so the modulation, a bit more control over the shape and stuff of the LFO. You can set that for pitch and tremolo and so on. And then you've got all these really nice effects, right? And I'm definitely not going to, go in and demo those, but they all come with their own presets as well, and they're all very good sounding effects. You've got the typical stuff that you have in Pianoteq, like, ability to change the sound, like make it sound like a really old instrument. And if you tap on mics and stuff, you've got all the same control over the microphone position and all that you do in the other Pianoteq instruments. So there you go, everyone. I hope that's useful for you. Definitely, I think, interesting for people who already have, say, the standard, which I've always got so confused between what's stage and what's standard. So you have to remember, stage is the basic version. Standard is the more powerful one. It's the one I would recommend getting. If you've got standard, I think this is pretty interesting. If you've only got stage, the basic thing, then you're not going to be able to tweak these very much. And I personally would find that a little bit frustrating. But beautiful sounds for sure. One thing I will say, I wish that this was MPE. Anything that's physical modeled, I really love that kind of control that MPE gives you over that. So this is not MPE, as none of the Pianoteq instruments are MPE. So that's the only real criticism that I would have. All right, folks. Hope this was useful for you. Take it easy. Cheers.